Okay, with no further ado, I actually have 2 slides. I asked permission because I knew there's just no way it would all fit on one slide. But anyways, Connecticut is kind of odd because we actually have 3 agencies that provide for oversight of the safety of our food supply. But in terms of these regulations, only 2 are intimately involved. The Department of Consumer Protection, whose jurisdiction focuses on food manufacturing as well as other things, but in this context, food manufacturing. And so they'll carry out anything that relates to the Preventive Controls Rule, while the Department of Agriculture will develop and implement the Produce Safety Rule. So our Department of Public Health really has no significant role as they address primarily food service end of things. Regarding educational technical support, at this point, there's really just one extension educator, me, and I cover all aspects of both rules as, in some manner. So in terms of the Prevention and Controls Rule, I have completed the lead train and achieved the lead trainer designation for the Food Safety Preventive Controls Alliance. And luckily, due to great collaborators at the University of Massachusetts and University of Rhode Island, we work together as much as possible and rotate our courses among the 3 states. And we have produced 5 courses so far as a group and have 2 more planned for the next few months. Connecticut itself has been the coordinator of 2 of those workshops. In terms of technical support, UConn does not have a food science department. We do have a dairy extension specialist who has been working with the dairy industry, but beyond that, I'm not expecting that there'll be a lot of, in terms of prevention and controls, a lot of input from our university. Our Department of Consumer Protection, and Frank Green is here this week. They have trained 8 inspectors. They came to a preventive controls course we offered this fall, and they continue to inform processors in Connecticut of FSMA requirements when doing state licensing inspections, and also informing them about the FDA model food safety plan program that they have. So in terms of the produce safety rule, we probably have a lot more going on here. In 2017, Connecticut Department of Agriculture was granted, after a hard-fought fight, they were granted statutory authority by the legislature to implement the produce safety rule. They entered into both a Competition A and B agreement with FDA. And just in the last couple weeks, UConn has signed an MOU to provide education, outreach, and technical assistance. Certainly this includes our PSA training, having trained 2 trainers, and also one of the trainers that we trained, because neither I nor Candace Bartholomew, who's our IPM person, have much of a strong background in farming. We actually recruited and trained a farmer to be one of our PSA trainers. And he's been excellent, and I'm actually considering using some of the MIU funds to perhaps do the same with another farmer. And then I am the only lead trainer in that group. We've provided 3 courses so far, 2 last spring, 1 this fall, and we're just about to max out on our registrations for 2 courses in February and March. Suddenly it seems our produce safety courses are the hottest ticket in town. We are augmenting our coursework with the use of clicker technology. The farmers really seem to enjoy that. Keeps their sort of head in the game instead of just watching boring slides. And also for our next round, we're entertaining the thought of doing some group work. We do a 2-day course, which does give us a lot more freedom to add some of this extra material that we think is essential to reinforce important concepts. Our farmers have never really argued about wanting a one-day course. They felt that the information was way too much for them to absorb in a one-day setting. We'll also be conducting information sessions, developing training materials, and UConn is going to be responsible for doing the farm inventory. The Department of Ag staff are busy developing their produce safety program, hiring an inspector, Katie Uhas, who's here this week, and conducting additional outreach activities. You'll see us at basically any ag-related meeting in the state these days. And finally, the Department of Ag has also made the produce safety rule-related projects as a priority for their state grants that include farm transition grants, to help farms update their facilities or their operations to help with compliance. Okay,
Thanks, Diane. Yeah, absolutely. Delaware is next, Callie. Yes, thank you.
Okay, good morning. My name's Callie Neal. I'm in the Department of Animal and Food Sciences at the University of Delaware. And in Delaware, we are often referred to as the small wonder. But what's wonderful is that the university and the Department of Ag work so well together. So we've offered about 3 PSA trainings, 1 in the state, and we work very closely with the Delmarva area. In Delaware, most of our growers are in the southern 2 counties, and so we are very nicely blended there with our neighboring states. We will be hosting another PSA training in March. So Gordon Johnson and I are both at the university that work together with Andrea Jackson, and it's very exciting that we have a new food safety program coordinator, Anna Wick, who's here at this meeting. So we're all very excited to be working together. We're also establishing an inspector position at the Department of Agriculture, and so they've really worked very hard to get the funding and really use that funding very effectively. And then we will be participating together along with another part-time individual, Jennifer Jones, in the on-farm readiness preparations and working with Extension there. And Andrea actually provided an update recently at Ag Week to over 250 growers. So that was very well received, all about different aspects of FSMA. So in Delaware, we've really been focusing more on the PSR instead of preventative controls, working together with our partner states in that area. In terms of research areas, we always like to provide research updates and science to our growers, kind of showing that to back what we're doing and why it's important. We also often bring in the personal stories, like the ones that you just heard. I find that they are very effective and rewarding and make us all think a little bit more, making that connection to our head and our heart. And we're part of the Delmarva Task Force, which is a really nice group. We actually won a collaborative FDA award. We're pretty tight-knit group, so it's always very helpful when it comes to produce work. And I thought I'd sneak in a second slide as well. So my laboratory group is doing part of the quantitative risk assessment work with FDA and their risk assessment team, along with the Western Center at UC Davis, who's the main group on this, and they're collecting samples out of Yuma. And so Arizona is involved, as well as the University of Florida was just brought on board. So we've been collecting samples from manure piles for over a year now, and you can see some of the different pictures and students that are going out to collect piles or collect samples. We visited over 40 poultry farms and 24 cattle farms so far in the Delaware and Delmarva area. And just to give you a little bit of flavor, so the point of this work is because we have that reserved spot right in the PSR rule for manure. And so what FDA is doing is collecting data from all over different regions of the state and then looking at how much salmonella or how much shigotoxigenic E. coli is found in those different piles. And so just to give you a little flavor of what we're finding, there's some averages about a log, 2 log MPN per gram. You can see the non-0157 S-Tex had fairly low prevalence in terms of piles, whereas salmonella, as you might expect, right, we often think it's endemic in the environment, and so it's there. So hopefully this is all good news kind of coming together for the FDA to help continue the policy development. So thank you.
Thanks, Callie. It probably does.
Hello, everybody. I'm Steve Pillis with the Mass Department of Ag. Connecticut and Delaware had me real nervous when they apologized for 2 slides because I have 4. But I promise I will be quick.
Half a second per slide, no problem.
Just to give you guys a few updates from our department. In terms of inspection protocol, Massachusetts is continuing to utilize the state's Commonwealth Quality Market Access Food Safety Program as a platform for conducting pre-audits, OFRs, technical assistance, whatever you want to call it, an excuse for us to get on the farms and educate the growers and to train new staff as they're coming on. In terms of farm inventory, we are slowly collecting, or not slowly, but we're collecting data using internal databases, our grant programs, pesticide information, and then working with external partners like our buy locals to continue to gain information on the farms in our state. And we are working on creating an internal electronic IT platform for collecting this data and organizing it. And we'll be using that for supporting inspections as well. In terms of education, outreach, and collaboration, we have established working relationships with external partners like UMass and our state's buy locals to conduct training and outreach in the form of twilight meetings, workshops, newsletters, PSA grower trainings, etc. We've been attending trainings as necessary. We've been holding meetings with organizations like Farm Bureau, industry folks, buyers, to educate them on the PSR and how we're implementing FSMA in Massachusetts. And we're participating in events and workshops such as the Soil Summit in Geneva, New England Fruit and Vegetable Conference in Manchester, to try and get Massachusetts out there. And an update from UMass. I can only speak so much on UMass. If you want to learn more, you can badger Amanda back there. But they've been conducting a number of preventive controls trainings, participating and holding lead-supported QI in 2017, and they have another planned in Amherst in March of this year. Amanda's been working on a number of projects, including a food safety management training for small and emerging food business, integrating a food safety culture for concept to commercialization. Again, you can talk to her about that. And they've been working with our department on another project, establishing FDA-approved scheduling processes for acidified shelf-stable foods to increase usage of specialty crops in Massachusetts. Amanda has also been serving as the co-PI for an NECAFS grant. And UMass has also been working to provide 40 independent food development consults to Massachusetts processors, and have given 13 food safety-related presentations to a variety of different stakeholders. And this update, still from UMass, comes from Lisa McKeague. Sorry, Lisa. Yeah, so this comes from the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension, just some more partners in the state. They've completed both PCQI and lead instructor preventive controls for human food training. This update comes from Kim Contra. And with Amanda has educated Lower Cape Cod Community Development Programs, bringing a food product to business group. And they co-taught a preventive controls course for the Mass Department of Public Health with Amanda and URI. And this update comes from Brad Stevens of Commonwealth Kitchen in Quincy, Massachusetts, who provided support and information to, I believe, Amanda's Acidified Foods project at UMass, and worked with 20 small companies under their roof to be covered under preventive controls. They've also utilized our department's grants to effectively scale up production for some of their programs under preventive controls. And just to go back real quick for our statutory language, it has been sent to the State House and will be up for passage in June, and we are looking to add non-covered crops to our statutory language. That's it.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, mine is short and sweet. So in Maryland, I decided to highlight 3 of the outreach and education activities that we're doing. In Maryland, we're collaborating with the Maryland Department of Agriculture, the University of Maryland, and the University of Maryland Extension. So the first one that I have is the PSA and the preventative control trainings. So far, we've done 3 PSA grower trainings and have reached about 150 individuals. We've also done 3 combined trainings with the preventative control and the produce safety, and we have 2 more scheduled for February and March. And with those meetings and trainings, we've captured about over 70 people. The second one we've done is a PSA Train the Trainer, and we have had one of those for all of the University of Maryland Extension agents within the state, and we had about 45 Extension agents come to that. Those who attended the Train the Trainer course, some of them will be actually attending the 2 trainings, the 2 combined trainings that we're having, so that they will be the trainers for the course. The idea behind this was to have the farmers be educated on the produce safety rules, since many of our, not the farmers, the extension agents, since many of the farmers within our states rely on them for questions. The last bullet I have is we've done presentations at grower trainings. We displayed information and given talks on the produce safety rule at winter agronomy classes for growers who don't understand what the produce safety rule and may not know that they're covered. And we've also given 30 to 40-minute talks at some of the fruit and vegetable meetings.
Thank you, Molly.
All right, good morning. Jason Bolton, University of Maine Cooperative Extension, and we have a few things going on. So overall, we've offered preventive controls courses and produce safety courses. Both have pretty good results, as you can see, but the reception of some of these things, you know, overall, processors are upset about what they have to do, some of the larger ones, and the produce growers, there is a little confusion on some of the things, and I think as these regulations continue to roll out and continue to clarify certain things like water and so forth, will satisfy those things a little bit better. But overall, we've offered several courses. So we're working with Department of Agriculture to provide the produce safety courses at low to no cost. We're contracted with them in collaboration with our industry partner, Linda Titus at Ag Matters. I don't know where she is, but somewhere here. Oh, there she is. And so what we'll be doing is offering 8 courses over the course of basically May 2016 till March 2018. And so those will be low cost. We'll also be getting ready for on-farm readiness reviews, which will be no cost to producers or growers in the state of Maine. We'll be doing close to about 100 of those over the course of 2 years. So we'll be actually looking to hire someone to help us out with that. So if you know of anybody, we'll be posting that job hopefully at the University of Maine in the next couple of months. We've offered thus far 3 courses, 57 participants when it comes to produce safety. We also offered a course in collaboration with the University of New Hampshire. We had about 50 participants in that. We hosted it in Portland. We had a lot of questions, a lot of good conversation. Also realized that 50 people in a course like that is crazy to have. Way too many people, way too many questions. But it was good. It was good for New Hampshire and Maine to get together and provide that training and learn from each other. So that was really nice. So we had, I think, about 8 instructors as part of that. So that was a great learning experience. The lead trainer for our produce safety is Dr. Hab Machado from the University of Maine. So he'll be leading up those courses, and we have offered 3 of them thus far, like I said. The preventive controls course, we've offered 2 of those. We've had 42 participants. Most of the folks are qualified exempt, but a lot of people are really concerned about it and want to be ahead of the curve, so they want that education. And we've also assisted with development of forward food safety plans for folks that are not qualified exempt and under that actual rules. So that's been an interesting process, and the products were all very different. So the folks are a little concerned about that, but I think overall it's going really well, and we're trying to be as much of a resource as possible. But we have a good collaboration with Department of Agriculture, Ag Matters, and the University of Maine. And then all of our collaborators around New England have been really helpful. We can bounce ideas off each other, so that's been great. And NECAFS has been really strategic with that, so thank you. Appreciate that.
That's what we're here for. Thanks, Jason. Heather, yeah.
Hi, I'm Heather Bryant with UNH Cooperative Extension. New Hampshire is one of the states where HHS is actually the organization that has the cooperative agreement for produce safety. They are currently in the process of working on Competition A, and the plan is to apply for Competition B in the spring. We do have to get some legislative changes made in order to give HHS the authority to inspect the produce farms. So that process has started, and we're hoping to have some answers by July. Meantime, they've also started the farm inventory using an online survey, direct contact with farmers, and the information that's coming from the FDA. As far as educational activities, then we have a broader group of folks that are involved with that. So it's HHS, the Department of Ag, actually having HHS do the inspections. The Department of Ag feels that sort of frees them up a little bit to do more education than they might have been able to do otherwise. So that's been a little bit of a benefit. Cooperative Extension is involved, and then also the Local Food Safety Consortium through New England Farmers Union. Extension has hired 2 new food safety field specialists in the last year. We have Mary Choate and Courtney Simons. We've done 2 PSA grower trainings, including the one in collaboration with Maine that we just heard about, and then one that was in Concord. We've also done 2 PCQI trainings, but we don't have a lead trainer in New Hampshire, which has fortunately not turned out to be too much of a problem because there are lead trainers in all the states around us. So we're able to collaborate when we need those trainings. We've developed some online tools to assist growers and food businesses, primarily to figure out where in the rule they fall. We have a lot of very small, very diversified operations in New Hampshire, so that issue of figuring out where do we fall under the rule has been a big question mark, and there's still a lot of confusion about that. We also do presentations at grower meetings, but we're finding that one-on-one assistance to individual growers and businesses is proving to be the most effective, particularly for the more complex operations. That's it for us.
Thank you, Heather. I'm looking for Chris from New Jersey. Oh, it's been delegated.
Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. John Keller from NJDA. So starting in 2016, I guess, I'll go all the way back there, we started the statewide farm inventory database, and throughout the past year, we've been still collecting information on that. We sent out a survey, and we're still getting information back from growers on how to categorize them into, I guess, what categories they fit in and how they are required to comply to the produce safety rule. So we set them into categories like how much they make, what type of commodities they grow or handle, in order to determine which ones are higher priority and need to comply to FSMA. We've had a lot of outreach classes for the produce safety rule. If you were here for Chris's presentation yesterday, we've trained 229 people, but I think that's up now because they just had one on Friday. So over 250 people have been trained in regards to the produce safety rule. And we also have a lot of other classes that cover things like post-harvest handling and sanitation, worker health or hygiene, and just overall sanitation. We're having our state agriculture convention in 2 weeks, and there we're going to, one of our priorities there is to get people to sign up for on-farm readiness reviews in the coming year. So we're hoping to do at least 75 this year. And we also, as Chris explained yesterday, we had, we spent a lot of money on ads and print media buys in various publications in our state. I believe New Jersey Farmer, Vegetable Growers News, and things like that. And I also have an addendum from, this is for preventive controls for human food. And this is the trainings they conducted in 2017 from Donna Schaffner. She works at the Rutgers Food Innovation Center in Bridgeton, New Jersey. They had 8 participant classes this year for PCQI certifications, over 245 attendees, 2 train the trainer classes in Rhode Island and Denver, with 47 new lead instructors trained. Thanks.
Thank you. You only have about 30 slides, Betsy, is that right? Yeah. We got time.
I'm Betsy Ben from Cornell University. I actually do have 2 slides. This is the first one. When we started collecting information from the Department of Ag and Markets and people within the group, pretty soon you have all these data slides, and I was like, okay, I get a slide. So I actually made 2. But this is really going to be the focus of what I talk about, which is that it's really important, I think, holistically to look at all the different groups of people that we're trying to tackle here in the sense of helping meet both the regulatory requirements, but importantly, stay in the market. So to me, collaboration really sits at the top of the pile. In New York, I think we've done a good job. Ag and Markets from New York has a good representation here, as well as some of the other programs, the Produce Safety Alliance, the Institute for Food Safety at Cornell University, which if you guys aren't familiar with that was just started, and it really encompasses all of the programs. So the Food Venture Center, Bruno, raise your hand. Bruno's a representative from here. Beth is the coordinator of the IFS back there, but it also includes our dairy science program, which is really important because they do a lot of the training related to FSMA. Certainly, the New York State Agricultural Environmental Management Program, which I'm going to tell you a little bit about in some of the programs. So broadly, again, that collaboration stretches across the State Department of Ag, through the university, through other organizations, and nationally with things like NASDA, FDA, USDA, all of the things we've talked about over the last day. We do training specific to FSMA related to the Produce Safety Alliance, the Human Foods Rule, the Animal Foods Rule. I did not put foreign supplier verification, but we've actually done trainings there. Those are, again, done by our colleagues in dairy science. We also do things beyond FSMA, so helping growers write food safety plans, meeting HACCP plans if you're a small producer. We actually have a catalog. Beth is going to have a poster tonight, and we actually have a training catalog if you're interested in looking at the programs that we offer. But again, I think it's important to go beyond just the FSMA trainings to support the industry. We're also doing research that is funded collaboratively through NISDAM that include things like what's going on with water in New York. We also have some sanitary design projects. Chris and I are working on one as well that's across state lines. So lots of good things to keep generating information to help the industry. We have a state program, which is New York Grown and Certified, and this is where the environmental program comes in. It's food safety and environmental programs. The growers can get a label that says New York Grown and Certified. The important part here is there's going to be funding for growers to implement food safety practices. And so I think when we talk about they need help on the farm, they also need the resources to get that done. And then moving on to policy things like you all have said, I'm incredibly interested that Massachusetts is going to include non-covered produce. That's mind-boggling, so I was paying attention. But we've gone ahead and New York adopted the PC for Human Foods Rule. There's some limited scope GMPs and limited scope inspections that are supposed to be happening starting in this year. They've adopted the Produce Safety Rule and not some of the scopes. There's a few that they didn't pick up, of course, like things like manure, waiting for that to get settled. And the Department of Ag and Markets has been working on the farm inventory, coming to trainings to get growers to sign up for that. And also, I forgot to add this, but the on-farm readiness review is, of course, something we're involved in. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy.
Okay, Pennsylvania. I'm Jeff Stoltzfus. I'm the Farm Food Safety Educator, Extension Agent, based in Lancaster County, covering the state. We've done a lot of FSMA trainings, starting back in fall of 16. Last winter we did 5 trainings with 186 participants. We did 2 last summer specifically for mushroom growers. We have a big mushroom industry as well, so we did 2 for them through the American Mushroom Institute. We have 11 trainings scheduled for this winter. We've completed 4. I've actually done 3 since I did this slide last Wednesday. So yeah, this isn't necessarily the best time of year for a NECAFS meeting for me. But since last Wednesday, we've added probably another 180 growers to our FSMA train list. At Penn State, we have 12 educators that have gone through the Train the Trainer. 4 of us are lead trainers. We also have at least 4 industry folks, private folks in the state that have gone through the train the trainer, and at least 1 or 2 lead trainers there as well. Probably in Pennsylvania, we have a ton of small growers, thousands of them. We don't have a huge produce industry, but we have a lot of produce farmers. And probably over half of our growers are plain community growers, either Old Order Amish, Old Order Mennonites. All of these trainings, I might add, have had funding assistance coming from the Pennsylvania Department of Ag last year and this year as well. One of the trainings we did in the last couple days was a private one for an Amish cooperative with 100 participants. We've also worked with Wegmans, and I see a lot of collaboration with other groups, whether it's small cooperatives or larger buyers wanting trainings specifically for their growers. And while I was mentioning the trainers, I did forget to mention we do have one adjunct extension person now. Gretchen Wall has slipped across the border into Pennsylvania, so we sometimes grab a hold of her and use her in some of our trainings as well. I don't know if we'll let her go or not. I don't know when that'll come. We'll have to negotiate that with Betsy, I guess. We have a lot of folks in Pennsylvania interested in FSMA trainings. The Pennsylvania Farmers Union this year has done 2 trainings. They're also getting funding from PDA and from the National Farmers Union, and they have a lot of plans coming up for FSMA activities in the coming year with some videos with on-farm training for some of the modules. At Penn State, we have some other activities as well around FSMA. As I mentioned, our plain community is big, and a small subset of those do not like PowerPoint or do not appreciate those types of trainings. So we've worked at coming up with another curriculum delivery method. We're not changing the curriculum for them, but we are looking at other ways to deliver that curriculum, and we're in the process of piloting that. We don't have flip charts available now. That's the question we always get. We don't have flip charts. Luke's waving at me. We are not doing flip charts. We have a booklet that we have piloted that the farmers that have the slides in the booklet, and they flip through that as they go through the training. And so we are in the process of evaluating that at this time. If you have more questions on that, see Luke, and we'll have more updates on that in the coming months. Maria Gorovich, who's here, wave Maria. She's the principal investigator on a grant to do produce safety training for Hispanic, Latino produce growers and farm workers in Pennsylvania, particularly in our mushroom industry and our tree fruit industry in Adams County. That's the areas we're focusing on that. We are, yes, and I mentioned the plain community. And then a little bit on preventative controls. Penn State has done 8 preventative controls classes with 190 participants. Luke Laborde and Martin Bucknavy, Direct Crawl, are doing most of that work. Some specifically for the dairy industry and, of course, the mushroom industry, which we've worked very closely with in Pennsylvania.
Thanks, Jeff. Jeff is currently leading the YouTube ratings on the NECAFS channel with his webinar this summer on programming for the plain community. He's the person to beat this year.
Good morning. My name's Lori Pavarnik. I'm at the University of Rhode Island. In typical Rhode Island ingenuity, instead of asking for 2 slides, I made the box bigger and decreased the size of Rhode Island, so I didn't have to ask for permission, but got more information in anyway. We are actively engaged, obviously, in the produce safety and preventive controls for human foods in terms of activities. I work with Nicole Richard all the way back there, and then Sean McCormick, who's with the Center of Food Protection, DOH. So we have a collaboration in the food safety initiatives Division of Agriculture is taking the lead for regulation, but DOH is also working on outreach and administrating the FDA-funded collaborative agreement or cooperative agreement. URI takes the lead on all the training. So our efforts in training, what we have is we have our own, I think I mentioned it the other day, we have our own GAP program, and we've had it for 15 years, but we weren't going to start offering separate GAP program and a separate PSA program. So a young woman who works with me for the PSA side of things, Sage Lanterman, we are both trained as lead instructors, and we sort of put those things together. And we tell them when it's GAP, and we tell them when it's regulatory, and it seems to be working. But we've made it a 2-day class. We felt the need to do that and give sort of information and take it slow and allow for a lot of questions and dialogue, and that seems to be working. We've offered 2, which we've caught about 50 people so far, and we have another one coming up in March. We give general information meetings to any of our stakeholders. We have 2 groups that we have. We have our core group, where we meet maybe every 1 or 2 months, depending on what we need to do, and then we have an advisory group that we meet with once a while, where farmers are there to sort of give all sorts of feedback. We will be involved in the on-farm readiness review, and we've already done some voluntary visits to sort of engage farmers and to tell them, to sort of maybe correct misconceptions that are out there. There are a lot of them. And so just try to correct things and let them know that, no, this, you do not have to do this. Yes, you have to do this. And there's this overwhelming wave that's on some of our farmers. Our farmers are just very small, but some of them still have to comply. And, they just think that they're just so much they think they have to do, when in fact it's maybe not so bad. And since many of them have been through our GAP program, they're already 80% there. We have not yet adopted by reference the PSA, the produce safety rule, but we're on that road. Regarding the prevention and control of food activities, the collaboration here is with URI and just the Center of Food Protection, who takes the lead for regulatory inspections. We have 2 lead instructors again. Nicole Richard is a lead instructor, and myself. We have hosted 2 trainings, but again, just to reiterate what Diane said, we have this close working relationship with Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, so we're very much helping each other out, trying to offer these programs. The Part 117 has already been adopted by reference in our state. Regulatory training is underway, both in the classroom and field training, but it's the field training piece that they don't have quite yet. So we're just not quite ready to run out and do inspections. But they're targeting GMP enforcement for next year, and then full enforcement soon after that. We do have a food safety, USDA food safety outreach grant with the University of Massachusetts, where Amanda Kinchler, somewhere back there, is the lead on, where we're taking some of this and trying to work with small and emerging food businesses to help them understand what this is about, and to try to get them to maybe implement or adopt some of this, whether they're required to or not. So that's that.
Thanks, Lori. Just in keeping with the non-alphabetical order, it's okay. Yeah.
All right, are we?
Go ahead.
We're next?
Yeah, go ahead, Christina. It's fine.
I thought we were.
You're fine.
Who did I miss?
It's okay.
No, it's next. Next slide.
Okay.
See? I can spell. I only have 1 slide, but this is like a 6-minute talk, so. So I'm Christina Sweet from the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, and this is the Vermont State Update. We've had a very active year at the Agency of Agriculture, where we've expanded our state produce program and hired new staff, including our outreach and education coordinator, Dominique Giroux, who spoke yesterday at the Northeast Work Group meeting, and our first produce safety inspector, who's currently working on farm inventory efforts and development of our inspectional approach.
Last summer, we were privileged to be one of the states that piloted on-farm readiness reviews and will begin conducting on-farm readiness reviews after our state training this May. By hiring Dominique and supporting about 40% of a multimedia specialist position at the Agency of Ag, we've also been able to expand our outreach, education, and training activities. Those of you in yesterday's Northeast Work Group meeting saw our first video featuring a produce grower talking about the PSA grower training and about preparing to implement produce safety rule standards on the farm. We also organized our second state PSA grower training last November in collaboration with UVM Extension, and that took place over 2 days and incorporated on-farm activities, so we thought that approach was very successful, and if you're interested in learning more about it, happy to talk about it. Gretchen Wall was our lead trainer at that event. And we also launched the Vermont Produce Safety Improvement Grant Program with State of Vermont funding, and we were recently able to award 8 grants of between $7,000 and $10,000 to Vermont growers to make on-farm food safety improvements. There will be another opportunity for growers to apply for those funds this coming February. Finally, we were able to subaward $100,000 of our FDA cooperative agreement to UVM Extension, and this award includes 2 components. The first is technical assistance for on-farm produce safety improvements, including those who have received grants under our Vermont Produce Safety Improvement Grant Program. The second component the award will support is Extension's participation in on-farm readiness reviews and follow-up education and technical assistance beginning this summer. Over the past year, Hans Estrin of UVM Extension has continued to coordinate the Vermont Vegetable and Berry Growers Association Community Accreditation for Produce Safety, or CAPS program. The Agency of Ag is also involved in the development of this program, and we conduct CAPS audits for a small number of farms annually. We did about a dozen last year. And as a result of conversations with Extension, Hannaford supermarkets now accept CAPS accreditation plus that audit in lieu of USDA GAP certification. So, and through the Vermont Specialty Crop Block Grant Program, management of which is my other role at the Agency of Ag, UVM Extension recently completed a produce tracking and traceability project. You can learn more about that project during the poster session later today. And Extension has another ongoing Specialty Crop Block Grant Program project that organizes post-harvest management teams to provide coordinated technical assistance to Vermont produce growers. In other research news, Rachel Chapman at UVM Extension collaborated with USDA Agricultural Research Service and the UVM Department of Plant and Soil Science on research on E. coli survivorship in spinach and radish crops, and conducted a survey of Vermont and Massachusetts produce growers on water use practices, including testing and results in irrigation and wash water. UVM Extension is also collaborating with Cornell University and the Northeast Organic Farming Associations of New York and Vermont on a USDA food safety outreach program project titled Expanding Food Safety Outreach to Small and Mid-Sized Farms in New York and Vermont. And in addition, Chris Callahan leads the post-harvest produce safety component of the Cornell University-based project Developing an Eastern Broccoli Industry, which is funded by USDA's Specialty Crop Research Initiative. I was very excited to learn about this project because broccoli is actually my favorite brassica. True story. And last but not least, Extension is working with Cornell on a Northeast Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education project on post-harvest pre-cooling and curing. So before I leave the podium, I do want to mention that in preparing this update, I was really struck by how many of these updates involved collaboration between UVM Extension and the Agency of Ag. So our close relationship with Extension clearly enhances our work at the agency, but I think more importantly, it really adds value to Vermont growers who can benefit from a coordinated approach to produce safety and implementation of the produce safety rule moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Jeremy Grant from the West Virginia Department of Agriculture. We've really been focusing in the past year in creating a food safety culture in the state. Many of our growers and farms are very small. They're going to be exempt from the FSMA rule. But in order to get that education and outreach out there, we have been conducting the FSMA grower trainings regionally and trying to make those geographically friendly to farmers around the state to attend. Currently, we have trained 147 farmers around the state, as well as 23 extension personnel and West Virginia Department of Ag staff as trainers. We have one lead trainer, Dr. Desai Knights from WVU, who has been a tremendous asset and coordinator in this project as well. Part of our program in the FSMA grower training is kind of, I think like Rhode Island said, it's kind of lapped with the GAPS course as well, to kind of fill in those gaps and let people know what the differences are between them as well. The regional trainings continue to be a 2-day workshop. One is usually a week or so later with the Writing Your Food Safety Plan. The FSMA grower training is a prereq kind of to the Writing Your Food Safety Plan workshop, but people have been very receptive to that. West Virginia Department of Ag, West Virginia University, and also West Virginia State University comprise our food safety training team, if you're wondering what the FSTT stands for. We also look forward to participating in our on-farm readiness review training coming up here in April. Every year at our Small Farms Conference that WVU hosts, we offer a better process control school. Here lately, we've had a lot of interest in the cottage food industry, so it's important to provide that education and outreach to folks on home canning. We've also offered a Serve Safe Manager program, offered 3 food preservation and commercialization hands-on trainings, and a survey is being conducted to determine hurdles faced by workshop participants in applying the information learned in workshops from WVU. So, and also I think I'd like to reiterate, I probably ought to look back at my notes, we have seen a drastic increase in our gap audits. In 2015, we only had 6 audited farms, and now in 2017, we're up to 21. So we're definitely seeing an increase in an interest in knowing that that's opened the doors to many more markets as farm to school and other opportunities keep arising in the state. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. We have time for some questions, comments on state updates. Michelle?
So for those of us who are trying to track what's going on in each state in the region, maybe this already exists, is there a like a web page with a uniform reporting format? Because some people reported on statutory authority, some people didn't report on preventive controls at all that sort of stuff. Is there a way we can get this in kind of like a uniform format available to everybody?
Yes. So my quick answer to that is that's one of the main goals of the NECAFS Clearinghouse, getting it in a standardized form. I mean, yes, we can get there. Yeah, it's a good idea. The other thing we do is quarterly roundtable webinars where we cover a lot of these programs more in detail. So fewer projects in more detail, and we're always looking for folks to join in on those, both presenting and participating. So good feedback. Thank you. Other comments or questions on the state updates?
I'm interested in Massachusetts moving some previously non-covered items into the food safety. If they could expand on that for a sec.
Yeah, what we're doing with our statutory language is we had a lot of grower anxiety about farms being left behind, the smaller farms and the non-covered farms. So we've included a provision in our statutory language that is currently at the governor's office that was endorsed by our commodity groups to provide inspectional support, but only inbound requests for those farms that are growing non-covered produce or outside are in qualified exempt or fully exempt categories. Does that make sense? So if a farm wanted an inspection, they would call us, we would provide that support, but not outbound. It wouldn't be part of our normal inspectional cycles for covered farms. Got it? Okay.
Gretchen, and I don't remember the name of the woman from Vermont, you did some on-farm trainings. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. So we held our Produce Safety Alliance grower training in Richmond, Vermont at the Vermont Youth Conservation Corps farm, which is actually a working farm. And during the 2 days of the training, we had the regular PSA grower training curriculum interspersed with some time on the farm where people were given scenarios to work with and actually spent some time on looking at the landscape of the farm, and then at a later time looking at some of their handling and storage facilities to actually figure out scenarios like, okay, so here's our problem, how would I fix this? And it was really interesting just to see people really engaging with, the space that they were in and saying like, oh man, I'm a little concerned about that paint peeling up here, and like really looking at, thinking about working through the produce safety rule in an actual space. And so I think people appreciated having even though it was a 2-day training, having that opportunity, and I think we'd like to do it again.
Hi, I'd like to ask the senator from West Virginia, the extension person or whoever the person was that was up here, to talk a little more about their writing your food safety plan workshop. That sounds really exciting. I'd like to hear more about that. I don't know what his name was though.
Jeremy.
So, part of FSMA, you don't really have, it's not a requirement that you have you writing your food safety plan, but we've been working with a consultant out of Virginia who has put together a really fantastic packet. His name's With Morris. And basically for gap audits or anything like that, if you go through this, it's a pretty good stack, but you'll have all your forms in place, and it really makes the auditing process very, very simple and smooth for the auditor to come. So we've seen a really, a great increase in interest in that. I've sat in on a few of the mock audits just to kind of get a better feel of it, and it's, producers really, really like it, as well as industry folks coming in looking at that. So I'd be happy to share more of that information with you if you want to get with me later. Yep, thanks.
We do have a couple other folks joining the meeting today from outside of the region. We have Laurel Dunn from the Southern Center, University of Florida. Just give you a quick update on what the Southern Regional Center is up to.
All right, hi everyone. Like you said, I'm from University of Florida. I'm in Michelle Daniluk's group and representing the Southern Center. We just came back from our second soil summit that we hosted in the Southern region. Our first was in Houston in December, and then we just had one in Atlanta a couple days ago. So we're getting all that information compiled. There were some interesting differences, just how Texas and Georgia brought up different questions that we're now kind of pushing forward to FDA. We also are involved in the water summit as far as hosting some remote sites. I think in Florida we're going to have about 5 remote sites where we kind of get farmers in the different regions in to discuss and participate in the water summit since it sold out so fast yesterday. We've also been heavily involved in some curricula add-ons. We have 4 for preventive controls. We have 5 for the produce safety rule. It came up yesterday whether or not someone was working on one for sanitary design in packing houses. And we actually do have University of Tennessee is working on I think it's right now in PowerPoint form. I tried to find out last night how far along it is. It still needs a little bit of love before it's ready. But we're hoping to have these 9 add-ons ready by August, as well as 22 model food safety plans. We were concerned that a lot of our packing houses might get an example with making a food safety plan that would involve peanut butter or pasta or something that had nothing to do with packing blueberries or watermelons. So we picked about 22 commodities. We've come up with model plans that then a lot of our packers can find one that closely matches their operation and then kind of tailor it for what they need. So again, we're hoping to have all those done in August. They'll be hosted on the Southern Center site, but we're going to use the clearinghouse to, I guess, disperse those, and so everyone will have easy access all in one place. So we're excited about the clearinghouse option. We've also been doing evaluations. So every time a PSA training or a just FSPCA training is done in the Southern region, we give everyone who comes in a pre-test and then a post-test. just to kind of figure out what knowledge gain is in our courses and how effective we are in communicating that information. We have found a statistically significant increase in knowledge gain from both courses. I think for the FSPCA, we have 15 questions. Usually they come in on average answering 8 correctly, leave answering 10 questions correctly on the post-test. For the PSA, pre and post-test, I think it's about 16.75 correct on the pre-test, and they leave usually answering closer to 22 questions. So it's just been interesting to see how effective we are in communicating this material to everyone. And I think that's about all I've got from the Southern Center. So thank you.
Thanks, Laurel. Questions for Laurel? We're also joined by Dave Reed from the National Coordination Center. Dave, some quick updates nationally?
Sure. Thanks, Chris. So our job as a National Coordination Center is to work with the, if you will, 6 centers. There's the 4 regional centers, of which you've just heard from NECAFS and from the Southern Center. There's also a center called North Central at Iowa State, and then there's a Western Regional Center at Oregon State. And then there are 2 other cooperative grantees. One is the Local Food Collaborative, which is National Farmers Union, and Barbara Patterson is here representing them. And the other group is the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative out of University of Arkansas. So one of the activities that we are focusing on is we have a training advisory council, and we're holding a meeting next week. We have 24 members. Each of the centers is represented, as well as the alliances, and then some smaller grower and producer organizations. And so we're providing a forum to get information on what kind of training is needed, looking at what's available, how is it being disseminated, and what more could be done in that regard. We also have a website that we're developing focusing on training for growers. And so that website will point to the 6 centers. And then we also have a training post page where anyone who is offering training can post up a training course that could be anywhere related to food safety.
Great, thanks, Dave. Thank you, Dave. Any other final questions or comments on the state, regional, national updates?
It's a question for Dave. I was excited to learn about the training that you're going to be posting. Question is there going to be any vetting or quality assurance that's done to ensure that what's posted is accurate? And also, as time goes on and the rules change, what's the mechanism going to be for review to make sure that it's still appropriate?
That's an excellent question, and at this point it is crowdsourced, but we do control it, so we will be reviewing. We aren't in a position yet to vet those courses, but we are going to, in the future, take a look at that and see what we can do to do more vetting if that's necessary. But right now we're looking at it is going to be crowdsourced, so anyone can post up a training, but we'll be monitoring that to make sure that it's not something that's not appropriate to producer or processor training.
Final thoughts, questions? Okay, we're scheduled for a break until 10:30. Enjoy.